Don't I have that too?
I don't waste breath on an enemy. No room for negative energy. Nah. I hear them talking, don't get to me. Karma gon' catch up eventually.
Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
Nah. I hear them talking, don't get to me. Karma gon' catch up eventually.
All right, welcome in everybody to Load the Box. I am your host, as always, Jordan Hawthorne, joined by the marvelous and the wonderful Jack H. Day. Before I toss it over to Jack and, we have our little weekly banter here at the beginning of the show, I'm going to remind you to head over to Twitter and give the show a follow at LTB Vikings. One more time, that is at LTB Vikings. Load the Box Vikings. Load the Box was already taken, so it's at LTB Vikings. One more time there for you. You can follow Jack on Twitter at Jack_H_Day. One more time at Jack_H as in Hudson_Day. And then you can follow myself at JHawthorne16. That is J Hawthorne with no E. 16 or 16, whatever you feel like typing, however you put it in your head. Jack, we're here to talk about the NFC North draft tonight. Last week we went pick by pick. We went about an hour and a half, I want to say, or somewhere close to it. And we reviewed the hell out of this 2020 Vikings draft class. And tonight we're going to try and keep things a little shorter. We are just talking about, the first 3 rounds for each team. And we're going to kind of give some grades. We're not going to go pick by pick with the grades, but we're going to grade the draft class overall. And the reason we're looking at the first 3 rounds as opposed to 7 rounds is, 1, I don't know anybody that wants to listen to me and Jack talk for 6 hours. And 2, I think these are the guys, the first 3 rounds that are typically going to contribute in 2020 right away. They're day one potential starters, whereas you don't hear of many undrafted free agents stepping on the field week 1 and just blowing everybody's socks off. A lot of times they go through special teams. Like some undrafted free agent out of Minnesota State, Mankato, who I don't really know who he is. I don't know what became of him or what he was going to do before the NFL. But I've rambled long enough. Jack, how the hell was your week, man?
Yeah, it's been a very exciting week for me. Actually, we talked a little bit before the show on this, but I just purchased the biggest adult purchase I've ever had in my life in getting a townhouse, and I'm very excited we're moving in at the beginning of June, so I'm excited to be able to set up all of my Vikings stuff in my own room. I've been given clearance from the girlfriend that I can kind of make my own little office setup with a cool backdrop. I've always kind of wanted something like that. You see it out on, anyone that talks on TV, you see they have some sort of cool stuff in their background, and I have more Viking stuff than I would like to admit, so I'll finally be able to put some of that stuff to use, and I'm just very excited for that, and I'm excited for the show tonight as well. I think the NFC North had some very interesting picks, some good picks as well. Some teams got a lot better in the division, while some teams were criticized a little bit more for their picks, but you never know with the draft. There's been people where they've given an A grade, like the Vikings have gotten from many analysts, and then you look 5-10 years down the road, and it's like, okay, what happened to this A grade because this draft class was absolute crap? But tonight, we are going to do our best to kind of pick apart the NFC North and how we feel everything went. Also, just wanted to double down on what Jordan said as well. We are over the 900 mark in followers as well on Twitter now, so make sure you head over to the Twitter page, follow Load the Box. We're trying to do more stuff on Twitter, a little bit more video stuff's going to be coming out down the road as well. We're kind of hitting that weird part of the NFL season where there's not a ton going on. There's some virtual meetings starting to happen, but I think the most fascinating thing Vikings related that I've seen this week was Justin Jefferson showing the Good Morning Football crew how to do his end zone celebration. So that is the most exciting news that I've had Vikings related this week. But other than that, like I said, it's been a great week. Going to be moving into my first actual home. I've rented through college and stuff, but finally moving out of the parents' house and going to have my own space.
And big congratulations to you on that. Obviously we've talked before the show. Whenever I'm not my on AL Self or whatever. But that's awesome for you. And I just have to say, I think the creme de la creme of your like Vikings collection is your Mankato State Adam Thielen jersey. That's kind of why I threw that little joke in there. You have a Mankato State jersey,
yes.
right? Like you have a Thielen jersey. I thought so, and if you didn't, we were about to restart the show from scratch because I wasn't gonna look like that big of an ass. But I say we get right into it. We're about 5 minutes into the show, and we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna rip off some first round picks. And I think the best first round pick, not necessarily the best first round, but the best pick is the Detroit Lions, who got Jeff Okudah with the third overall pick. I think that's just such a solid pick. I think he was the best corner in this class. I mean, me and you briefly mentioned him in our defensive back show, but we both knew there was no chance he was getting down to 22 or 25. He was a top 5, top 10 pick, guaranteed. Never got charged with a defensive holding penalty in college. Sticky man coverage, plays the ball, really smart, great hips. He's everything you want, and I really hate that Detroit got him. I was hoping they would trade back and maybe get a riskier first round pick. And then, throw stuff at the wall and hope something sticks in the later rounds. But they didn't. They stood true at number 3. They got Jeff Okudah. I think that was actually the best pick of the first round just because of how good of a player they got. Now, of course, I don't think that changes their outlook for next season. But, Jack, what are you thinking with Jeff Okudah?
Yeah, I love the pick. I hated the pick because I was mad that Detroit got him. I was hoping they were going to pick a defensive lineman or someone that's not going to make as big of an impact, but obviously they dished Darius Slay this offseason as well, so he's no longer there. And he's going to come in and he's going to give you that true lockdown corner. He's got a ton of talent. And, yeah, like you said, we did touch on him a little bit on the cornerback show, but it wasn't a ton because we knew there was realistically pretty much a 0% chance of him dropping. I agree with you. I don't think I'm ready to say they had the best first round in general because obviously – there is a team. Obviously, the Vikings had 2 first-round picks, and I've kind of fallen in love with both picks the more that time has gone on. But if we're grading one pick, I think Detroit absolutely hit the nail on the head with this pick. They didn't mess it up. They stayed at 3, and they took the best player available, and they're filling a huge need with the departure of Darius Slay. So I really love the pick, and I think Detroit did the right thing for once, actually. So
yeah, and that's why you bringing up big play Slay heading out. He went to Philadelphia. Am I correct in that?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so Slay goes to Philly, and that's one of the reasons why I don't think it makes the Lions any better than they were last year because they lost big play Slay, Darius Slay. He goes to Philly, and they add in a young defensive back who is going to be really good, but they had a really good defensive back last season, and they still finished dead last in the division. They still have a quarterback that can't stay healthy. They still, maybe need running back, maybe need a couple things. But we're just talking about the first round right now. So moving on to the next highest pick in the first round. It was not the Chicago Bears who traded that first round pick, I believe, for Khalil Mack. I believe that was part of the Mack deal. From a couple years ago. So the Vikings are up at number 22. Obviously, we covered this last week. Not a lot more to say. Justin Jefferson out of LSU. Jackson love with him. I'm holding out because of the Laquan Treadwell pick, the Troy Williamson pick. There's just been, for every, I heard a funny joke from, it's a YouTuber called Urinating Tree. Check him out. He makes these stupid videos where he just like craps on NFL teams. And he reviewed the draft, and he said for every Randy Moss and Percy Halvin, there's a Troy Williamson and Laquan Treadwell. We'll see how Jefferson plays out. I've started to come around to him a little bit more. I mean, the more hype videos I watch, with generic beats in the background, the more I'm going to like this guy. I'm excited to see him play. I'm excited to see what he can do. And I do think in 4 or 5 years, he could be a definite staple of this offense. So we move there, and then I'll go ahead and throw our next pick in as well. We'll skip over Green Bay. We'll come to them last. With the 31st pick, we move down collect more mid-round picks. We get Jeff Gladney out of TCU, a pick that I think every Vikings fan loves. Obviously, we were decimated at the defensive back position. 3 of our corners leaving in free agency. We get Jeff Gladney, who who Paul Allen said was, quote, a Mike Zimmer guy. Disciplined, fluid hips. I mean, he was my probably second or third favorite corner in this draft, and to get him with the second to last pick of day one, I think was great value. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do once the season starts up. Jack, I'll let you go over our 2 picks briefly because, I mean, if you really want to know how I feel about these, go back, listen to last week's show, watch it on YouTube, do whatever you want to do, but Jack, briefly go into these 2 picks.
Yeah, going into the Justin Jefferson selection, if you want to get your hopes up a little bit more like myself, you can head over to my Twitter account. I actually wrote a story this week for KFAN saying why fans shouldn't be scared of the Troy Williamson and the Laquan Treadwells, because if you listened to the show last week, you heard that I've all of a sudden started diving into analytics, and I don't really feel like going into too many numbers tonight, but Jefferson ranks in the 80th percentile or better in all of his analytical or athletic analytics and all of his metrics. And, I mean, Troy Williamson, I went back and I looked at his, and yes, he ran a very fast 40-yard dash, but all of his other stuff was below average. He never had the solid hands. Obviously, he had a little bit of a case of the dropsies, so that wasn't great, obviously. And then you go to Laquan Treadwell on all of his metrics, although he was productive in college. He did not have the metrics. Every single one of his metrics was beneath the 50th percentile. His 40-yard dash time was in the 11th percentile, so he just wasn't a great athlete. And what we're getting in Justin Jefferson is someone who was top 3, top 4 in all wide receiver categories during his time at LSU in terms of yards, catches, and touchdowns. He was very productive, and like I said, he's above the 80th percentile with all of his metrics, so he has a little bit of combination of both. And then there's that worry about him being a slot receiver as well. If he's going to turn into a dominant slot receiver, he can play outside as well. In 2018, he played a lot of outside, but if he's going to dominate from the slot and Adam Thielen learns to do his thing a little bit more from the outside, I think we're going to be sitting A-OK. Justin Jefferson was also ranked as the highest percentage of contested catch rate in college, so he had the best contested catch rate in all of college, which is something that you wouldn't traditionally see out of a slot receiver. So it tells me that he can do a little bit of everything. He can go up and win the jump balls as well. Moving on to the next pick, I also love Jeff Gladney as well. It was that dog mentality cornerback that Mike Zimmer so desperately needs. I think he's going to pair excellent with guys like Mike Hughes. We drafted another guy in the 3rd round that we'll touch on in a little bit as well. Maybe get Holton Hill rolling as well, see what Chris Boyd can do. I think it really shifted our secondary, and we desperately needed help with the departures of Rhodes, Trey Waynes, and Mackenzie Alexander. So there was a video circulating Twitter today of him. He hit a wide receiver so hard, and TCU was on the road, and the crowd absolutely went nuts calling for a penalty, but it was a clean hit. He just hit the guy so hard. I know Nick Olson tweeted about him as well. There was a play where he gave up. It was literally a 2-yard gain, and he was slamming his hands on the ground out of frustration. Give me that guy in Mike Zimmer's defense because he's aggressive and he gets pissed off if he makes mistakes. I think it's going to be, we absolutely nailed the 1st round, and I think we had a lot of great picks in this draft class, but you can look in the 1st round. I think we got 2 solid guys that are going to come in and contribute on day one.
Yeah, I 300% agree with you. Typically, we say 100% agree. I think we hit it out of the ballpark with our 1st round pick. And saying that makes me miss baseball just that much more. But moving on to the Packers, apparently Green Bay was trying to trade up with the Vikings to get Jordan Love, which is just that's insane to me that you would be willing to give Rick Spielman, who is like the guy for trading down and just slam dunking the middle of the draft, and you're like, here's some more ammo so we can get a quarterback that isn't going to see the field for at least, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years, and that's if they decide to, get rid of Rodgers, trade him, which, by the way, we're not going to get into it tonight, but an Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre 2009 run, but in like 2023 5, I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. Sign me up. Let him go to the Jets for a season, do some inappropriate things with his cell phone, and then he can come to Minnesota and take us to a championship game. I'm fine for. I'm here for it.
He's got to flirt with retirement as well before he can do that.
Yeah,
too.
obviously. But I really like the Jordan Love pick. I actually do. I understand. They got embarrassed in the NFC Championship game, and they got embarrassed the Sunday night before Thanksgiving, I believe. But I think it's a solid pick because they went 13-3. Now, I'm not going to agree with the second round pick. We'll get to that later. But the first round pick, getting a guy like Jordan Love, I think he comes in, he sees how Aaron Rodgers works. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a mentor, but I think that they have very similar play styles, especially a young Aaron Rodgers, more athletic, extend the play. He doesn't need good wide receivers because almost any wide receiver at the NFL level can get open if you give them 15 seconds of you just sprinting around, evading edge rushers. And I hate the pick as a Vikings fan, but, I mean, I've been on this show many a times, praising Jordan Love. I'm absolutely, no pun intended, in love with Jordan Love. And, Jack, you even made the joke last week. I have to hate him now. I can't say that I like Jordan Love. So, as of now, unless we are talking about Jordan Love at Utah State, I will never say, a good thing about him ever again. At Utah State, loved him. Now that he wears, the dreaded cheese head hat, I hate the guy, and I don't look forward to playing him in 2023. So that's my analysis of that pick.
Yeah, and maybe you never know. Maybe this is just we're gonna get into a continued time warps where Aaron Rodgers makes a playoff run at the Vikings in 2025, and Adam Thielen retires on top, and then we get down the road to 2035 or 2040, and Jordan Love is getting towards the end of his Hall of Fame career, and he's like, you know what? The Packers just drafted another rookie to replace me. I'm out of here, and then it's the same exact cycle, and he comes to Minnesota, and we just keep making playoff runs with former Packers quarterbacks.
The only way I'd be okay with that is if each time it happens, like 2025, Aaron Rodgers throws an interception to the Saints. It has to end the same way, or else it's not as fun that way. But
you know what? If the Vikings win a Super Bowl, I'm not gonna be mad who's under center.
No, I don't care who wins. I don't care who wins it.
But yeah, my dad was curious how you were handling your man crush over Jordan Love this week. I talked to him a little bit. He's like, what's he going to do with him being in green and gold now? It's going to be a little bit different. But, yeah, I agree with I understand the criticism. CBS gives the pick a D, and I understand that because you have Aaron Rodgers. You were a game away from the playoff or from the Super Bowl last year. Obviously, it didn't go well for them in San Francisco, but getting a guy like Jordan Love who has a very, very high ceiling, in my opinion. I mean, he is very raw, but you let him sit and develop for a couple years. It's what Green Bay has done. And if they hit on another quarterback and they get to go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and if Jordan Love 3-4 years down the road turns into another elite quarterback, they're going to look like absolute geniuses. But as of right now, I don't like the pick just because they still have Aaron Rodgers, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's got some gas left in the tank. He needed wide receiver help as well. I mean, he's got Devontae Adams, but behind that, there's not a lot there. And I'm just going to kind of carry this into their second round pick as well. And they selected A.J. Dillon out of Boston College, a running back. And it's like, okay, now it's just like, what? I was scratching my head. I was like, what are you guys doing right now? Now, first you might have pissed off Aaron Rodgers, and you didn't get him any help. And now you get a running back when you have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams already on the roster who are a very solid 1-2 punch. In my opinion, I think Aaron Jones is a top 10, maybe top 7 running back in the league. He's in the top 1 or 2 tiers of running backs. He might not be at the same exact level you want to put a guy like Saquon Barkley in, Delvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, but if he's not in that top tier, he's in that next tier right down. I think he's very talented. If I'm remembering correctly, he led the league in rushing touchdowns, and I think that was a guy where they were starting to utilize him more last year, and he's shown how productive he can be. It was just another pick where I was just scratching my head. There was wide receivers still available. You could have gotten a second-round wide receiver with a hell of a lot of talent who would have been able to come in on day one and produce as a second-round pick. So I was scratching my head with that running back pick as well. I didn't fully understand what they were doing. I know I have some Packers fans as friends, and they were hoping to land one of these top wide receivers or land one of the top linebackers as well, and they missed out on both of them.
Not to mention they also they lost their left tackle. Is it Bologna? Oh, I can't remember his name. But they lost one of their starting tackles.
They still have Bakhtiari. I think it was the other one, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Bulaga sounds right.
Bulaga, yeah, that's anyway, they lose a starting tackle, so Rodgers is now down a starting tackle that's been there for years, still has no weapons. One of his weapons from last season, Valdez-Scantling, is in Detroit, and that's why I said I liked the Jordan Love pick, because you would think they go into the second round thinking wide receiver. No, they take a running back, so now they're 3 deep at running back. If they cut Jamal Williams, someone's getting a very good running back. Jamal Williams is a hell of a running back, and they do not use him enough. And I don't think that is an unpopular opinion. If you look at where he goes in fantasy drafts every year, there's always that one guy who takes him in like the 5th round, and he's like, this is the year that they're finally going to do it. They're going to unleash Jamal Williams. So I didn't understand the pick. I didn't understand, and I know we're only touching on the first 3 rounds tonight, but this was a historically deep, at least on paper, historically deep wide receiver class, and they took none. They did not get anything, and they added some wide receiver whose name is escaping me, and they add some veteran guy in the offseason, and I guess that they thought that was fixing it. Like, Green Bay, we don't typically sign free agents. Well, we signed one mediocre wide receiver free agent this season. That's enough help for Aaron Rodgers. So now he's got Devontae Adams. They still have, I think, a good team. It would not surprise me if they win the division again next year. One of their players tweeted out, y'all acting like, we went 2-13 last season. They did go 13-3. It just, I don't know why. I was kind of expecting them to sit at like the 30th or the 29th pick and take a guy like maybe Ross Blacklock, take a guy who could maybe show up the run game against San Francisco, kind of draft to beat San Francisco, because San Francisco I don't think is going anywhere, especially with the addition of Trent Williams. But yeah, the Packers' first 2 rounds have they leave me just like you scratching my head. Quarterback, running back, when arguably those are their 2 strongest positions right now, right next to wide receiver. Moving back to the Lions in the second round, they go with DeAndre Swift out of Georgia, which I think is a fine pick. I don't think it flips the franchise around. I think the Lions are poised to finish last again in this division. I think Swift is fine. I didn't understand it, though, because they had Jack, help me out, please. What was the running back's name? I really like him.
Kerryon Johnson.
Thank you. I knew it started with a K. Kerryon Johnson, I think, is a fine running back. I think he's pretty good. I would say he's in the top half of running backs in the league. To take a running back there, I don't know if it's like, we want to be like San Francisco, so we're just going to run the ball all the time, and it doesn't matter who plays quarterback. But I don't know. I liked the pick because I like DeAndre Swift a lot. I think he's a really good running back. That's all there is to it. But whenever you look, again, really deep wide receiver class. A lot of people think this is a really deep defensive back class. You look at some of the guys that were there, 3 picks into the second round, and does a running back make sense for a team that is coming off, they're picking third for a reason. So I didn't love the pick. I like the player. I didn't love the pick because I feel as though they need more than a running back to change the fate of this franchise. But we'll see how it goes in a couple years. Jack, your opinion on this?
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like Swift himself as a running back, but I was also confused with this pick a little bit because I think Kerryon Johnson has a lot left, and he's still a younger guy, obviously, but I think he has a lot left to prove. I think he's very talented, and he's going to find success for years to come in the NFL. But wanted to share up one other thing. I just double-checked this because I wasn't aware of it. Earlier you said Valdez-Scantling was signed with Detroit. I think you were talking about Geronimo Allison because I'm looking at the depth chart right now. And that was another position I thought that maybe they would. I mean, Marvin Jones Jr., I don't know how old he is, but I feel like he's been around. Kenny Galladay is solid. I definitely think they could have used help in a few other areas as well, potentially get that defensive line a little bit stronger. Obviously, they took Jeff Okudah with the 3rd overall pick, and they shored up that secondary a little bit, but I definitely think they could use some help in a couple other areas as well. And I didn't think running back was necessarily a need. But at the same time, I think I've praised teams for not going after need and taking best player available at that time. I think DeAndre Swift is a very, very talented running back, and I think he can do some damage at the next level. I think they have a legitimate backfield now as well with Kerryon Johnson. They have Bo Scarborough, kind of the running back that can punch you in the mouth, the bigger guy run through you. And I think they're looking at they have a very legitimate backfield now. I mean, if you look around the NFC North, obviously the Vikings have a very solid running game, and Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. We just talked about Green Bay's backfield as well, and Chicago has David Montgomery and Tyreek Cohen as well. So they shored up their backfield. I was a little bit of a head scratcher as well for me, but overall I do like the pick. I like the pick more than the Packers taking a running back in the 2nd round, but I also think that's just because I think Swift is a lot more talented. So.
Yeah, we'll have to agree to disagree because I don't want to tone this into Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp screaming at each other over running back. Like I said, I do think I like the player. I just didn't love the pick. But like you said, I mean, if he's the guy that, they thought was the number 1 on their board and they were drafting, best player available, I mean, good on them. When you're that bad, I actually think that's a good way to go. I just think that sometimes trade out of it, man. Like, you don't have to take a player. But moving on to Chicago, they had 2 second-round picks. With the first one, they took tight end Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. And then with the second one, they took probably like my 4th favorite defensive back in this class, Jalen Johnson out of Utah. I think they got 2 guys who are very talented. Kmet is going to be a headache in the NFL, big physical type of tight end. And Jalen Johnson is, a pretty good corner. I mean, he's not as good as Okudah, but that's why you're picking him in the mid-2nd round as opposed to the 1st round. I think Jalen Johnson is a fine defensive back. I think he's going to develop into a fine defensive back. And under Chicago's defense, well, apparently that's like their strong suit now. Jalen Johnson, I think, could develop into an extraordinary defensive back that the Vikings are going to have headaches going up against year after year. Jack, what do you think of the Chicago Bears' 2nd round beings that, one of the picks was kind of their 1st round pick?
Yeah, I don't know a ton on Kmet. I didn't do a ton of tight end research heading into this draft class, so I don't know a ton on him. It just seemed like a little bit of a reach for me because there's been jokes circulating Twitter with the Bears having like 15 tight ends on their roster, which that's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but I think at one point there were 8, 9, 10 tight ends on their roster, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I know he's got a lot of talent, and if they felt that was the same thing. If they thought he was the best player available, I'm all for it. They need some help on getting some weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and then switching to that 50th overall pick with Jalen Johnson. I think that's my favorite out of their 2 second-rounders. It's going to be the only 2 picks that we talk about with their draft because their next pick came in the 5th round, which I think is a disaster. Obviously, the Khalil Mack trade, they lost a lot of future picks, which I think is you won't see the Vikings go do that because I think it really hurts your franchise, and I think we could see that for years to come with the Chicago Bears with not being able to shore up their team as much because they haven't had the draft capital. But I really like the Jalen Johnson pick as well. I think he would have been someone that Zimmer would have had his eyes on if he were to start falling a little bit later to our 58th overall pick, but I'm glad he didn't, and I'm glad the draft fell how it did because I'm really happy I can kind of use this as our transition into the Vikings 2nd round as well. I'm really happy that Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State, the offensive tackle, made his way down. I think there's a lot of people saying that Zimmer drafts only defense, and sure, he did get his 1st-round cornerback, but I think Justin Jefferson and the Ezra Cleveland pick, I think those are both heavily Gary Kubiak-style players. I think they're 2 players that Kubiak had a lot of influence in the team taking both of them. I think Justin Jefferson was the guy that has been mentioned where they were willing to trade up and go get him because Kubiak loved him that much. And same with Ezra Cleveland. He fits in our offensive scheme, the outside zone run scheme perfectly. He's athletic. And he's not the same exact guy analytically with his metrics, but he's very close to Brian O'Neill, who has been the most consistent part of our offensive line over the last 2 years. So I'm very excited. I think it might take a year or two for him to get NFL ready. If the team decides they want to start him at left tackle and move Reef into guard right away, I'd be completely fine with that as well. Kind of let him get his feet wet in the NFL. We couldn't expect too much out of him at the next level right away. But like I said, just get his feet wet and let him get comfortable at the next level. I think he's going to be a piece that's really going to solidify this offensive line for years to come. Now we have him, we have O'Neal, we have Garrett Bradbury under center, who was our first overall pick last year. Yes, the guard position didn't get addressed in this draft until like the 7th round. However, I do think there could be a chance that we might go get another one in free agency. The Drew Samia coming up, I think the team's very high on him. I don't think it's as much of a positional need as the offensive tackle position was. The left tackle position is one of the most important positions in football, and I think the Vikings absolutely crushed it with this pick. I wasn't expecting him to fall all the way down to 58, just given his metrics. I mean, he's in the 90th percentile or above for a lot of his stuff. I talked way too much about that last week, so if you want to hear the numbers detailed a little bit more, you can go listen to last week's show or read one of my articles. But I really like this pick for the Vikings. Like I said, I think he fits Kubiak's scheme perfectly, and I think he's really going to shore up the offensive line for years to come.
And like you said, I didn't expect him to fall this foul to us either, especially whenever the Dolphins, I believe, took Austin Jackson, the tackle out of USC. I was like, oh boy, it's going to be one of those drafts where, if a team does reach for a tackle in the 2nd round, they're probably getting like a 3rd or 4th round guy. And it didn't end up happening. He fell right into our laps. Everything you just said, spot on. Analytics, Brian O'Neill clone, just about. Probably going to take a year to get ready. But I think a lot of people didn't want to say it, but like Riley Reef is average at best. On his best day, he's solid. On his worst day, look up the gif of him and Khalil Mack, where Khalil Mack one-hands him off of his feet, and just onto the ground. Or look at, him getting beaten in the Los Angeles Rams game a couple years ago when we had the ball about to drive, hopefully to go score. It had been a shootout all game, and he just lets a pass rusher go right by him and strip sack. What's Cousins supposed to do? But I wouldn't mind moving him into guard. There's been some rumors and some rumblings about Ali Udo scooching in and playing guard. Apparently he is a natural guard. And so, we could see an offensive line of, Cleveland, Udo, the Grim Mucho, whose name always, I have his jersey, Garrett Bradbury, Jesus Lord. Garrett Bradbury at center, Drew Samia at guard, and then Brian O'Neill, the most consistent and the best Vikings offensive lineman. So really like the pick. Excited to see what he can do. I'm not holding out hope that I'm going to see him play this year, but I am holding out hope for 2-3 years down the line, this guy becoming a solid tackle, and then him and O'Neill carrying us to great playoff success. We already touched on the Packers' 2nd round pick, so I guess let's just stay with the Vikings and let's talk about Cam Dantzler. Jack, do you want to talk about Cam Dantzler? I feel like I'm talking about everybody and then letting you but if you want to talk about Cam Dantzler, he's one of my favorite picks in this class. I'll let you go into him and kind of tell the people what he's about.
Yeah, and just going off the CBS rankings, I just want to read the rankings that they had for this, just showing how high people are talking about the first 3 rounds for the Vikings draft. Justin Jefferson was an A grade. Jeff Gladney, they gave a B. Ezra Cleveland was an A-, and Cameron Dantzler was a B+. And, this is a guy where he ran the 40-yard dash at the combine a little bit slow. Sorry, I just kind of paused there a little bit. My dad made a joke about me almost saying, now this is a guy like Mel Kiper last week, and I just realized I just did it right there. Yeah, I watched too much draft stuff, but Cameron Dantzler, he played up against LSU. I don't have the PFF numbers and everything in front of me, but virtually he was the only cornerback in the entire SEC throughout all of LSU's historic run last season to be able to shut down Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's numbers were not anywhere near the same of what they were throughout all of the 2019 season when he was targeting Cameron Dantzler. And Jamar Chase, I think he held Jamar Chase to, was it under 10 yards? I don't remember the exact stat line, but it was something crazy for a team that was absolutely blowing over people. I don't know if it was a little bit of game plan where they were trying to avoid him, but even if that was the case, it should tell you something about Cameron Dantzler being a third-round pick. I mean, I know there's people that were hoping the team would have went guard here or gotten some more additional help on that offensive line. Mike Zimmer was licking his chops, I'm telling you right now, when he saw Cameron Dantzler start sliding down the board. I thought he was going to be a guy taken maybe towards the back end of the second round. He started to slide all the way down in that third round, and I think it was a no-brainer pick. The Vikings secondary lost way more than it has gained throughout free agency, and now it might have just gotten two legitimate starting cornerbacks. It might take some time for Dantzler to kind of get into the swing of things, but I mean, Zimmer is a lot harder on his cornerbacks than he is anywhere else. You see, like, with a guy like Stephon Diggs, he kind of babied him onto the field a little bit. I think we've seen it a little bit different with his cornerbacks. He kind of throws them out right away. So I think we're going to see that. I think you get a guy who's a lot more talented than some of the Vikings or the cornerbacks the Vikings have on their roster, and he is a lot faster than what he ran at his 40 time at the combine as well. So he's got the speed and he's got the ability to be a lockdown corner, which is exciting. And now the Vikings have they did lose a lot of good talent to free agency in that secondary, but they kind of shored everything up. They got a lot younger and they got a lot of talent as well, and I think they're going to pair really well with guys like Mike Hughes and Holton Hill.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. By the way, I think it's Chris Collinsworth who does the Now Here's a Guy. But now here's a guy in Cam Dantzler who he ran like a 4.5 or a 4.6 at his 40-yard dash. Typical Vikings fashion. He choked when it matters, but then whenever it didn't, I mean, he blew it. He ran like a 4.3 40. He's got really good speed. It shows on film. He's not a track guy, which I'm fine with. Really like what he's bringing, and I said it last week. I think Gladney is the Xavier Rhodes replacement, and I think Dantzler is the Trey Waynes replacement. I mean, like, day one, it is Dantzler can, just play off. He's got the recovery speed to, he can jump outs, and then if he gets boned, he can recover. Gladney's just going to be in your number one's face all game. I mean, I really love the pick, and I really, I don't feel the need to double down on what you said because like I said, I 100% agree with everything you said. His nickname is the Needle because whenever he hits you hard, it's like you're getting stabbed by a needle, and oh my God, I just love it so much. The Bears did not have a third-round pick, so it sucks for them. They had 2 seconds, and then they didn't pick again. They had 3 fifths and then 2 sevenths. Didn't think the Bears had a great draft. I think they got like 2 or 3 players that I liked, and then you never know with these late round guys though. But moving on, the Lions had 2 third round picks. They got one of the better pass rushers in this draft class, Julian Akwara out of Notre Dame, and then they took a guy that I really did want to see the Vikings get. They took Jonah Jackson, the interior offensive lineman out of Ohio State, probably like the second or third best interior offensive lineman in the class. Really wanted to see him, line up on Sundays for the Vikings, him and Samia. I mean, it would have been a dream offensive line of mine. That's just not how it played out. I understand it. I'm not mad about it. But Jackson does go to the Lions. I think that's a really good pick. He's really going to help DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson find some lanes up the middle. I think he's tough enough to, man up with guys and just take them one-on-one. But he also has that ability to excel in getting into space and being a lead blocker and kind of a more zone-type scheme. So those are the Lions, too. Akwara, I did some research on. I didn't he's got good he's a little raw, is my one critique of him. I'll just go with that. I mean, he's got all the traits you want. He just, needs to develop a plan whenever he's rushing the passer. That's kind of like the hot phrase is, he has to have a plan when he's going in there. I think with some NFL coaching, especially from a defensive mind like Patricia, I think Akwara could turn into a really good pass rusher. So I think the Lions probably got, I would put them 1 or 2 if I was ranking this class, top to bottom. I would probably put the Lions at 1 or 2. Obviously, the Vikings at 1 or 2 as well. I'm a little bit of a homer there, but Jack, what did you think of the Lions third round picks.
Yeah, I like them. I think, like you said, Aquara is going to be somebody that Patricia can develop and turn in, and they address another positional need at the interior of the offensive line with Jonah Jackson out of Ohio State. CBS ranks these picks an A- and an A, so they really like their third round, and I do too. I mean, the DeAndre Swift pick, we both said it was a little bit of a head scratcher, but I think it shores up that backfield a little bit. But then they went back in the third round and they really attacked two positional needs. So I think they got a lot better with this draft class. Obviously, we're not going to dive too much into the late round picks and this being the middle rounds and the third round. But they did take in the fifth round. They took a chance on Quintus Cephas out of Wisconsin, a wide receiver that I was fairly high on. I did like Tyler Johnson a lot more than him. A little bit of bias maybe to that, but I think Tyler Johnson's really going to flourish with TB12 down in Tampa Bay, and he's got two elite wide receivers out wide of him. I think he'll fit in perfectly in Tampa with two good tight ends now as well. So I like the Detroit draft a lot, just like you said. I think they shored up some positions that they really needed help at, and then they got one of the most talented running backs in this draft class as well. So rounding it out with Okudah with that third overall pick, arguably the best cornerback. I guess not even arguably. I think most people had him rated as the highest rated cornerback in this draft class. So they really attacked some positions of need, and I agree with you. I do think they had a top 5 draft in this 2020 draft class.
Yeah, and just ranking the NFC North, like I said, I think it's Vikings 1 because I think we got incredible value at all of our picks. I mean, Jefferson is, a top 3 or 4 receiver in this class. We got him in the 20s. We got Gladney, who's a top 2 or 3 corner. We got him in the 30s. And then we get Cleveland in the 2nd. And then we get Danslow, the whole draft, I think, for the Vikings just blew me out of the water. So I'd put them at 1. I'd put the Lions at 2. The Bears are going to be in dead last because they had 2 picks in the first 2 days. So not the best draft for them, but they did get Khalil Mack, and Khalil Mack is, I would say, worth not being able to take a chance on some guys that are, not everybody's going to hit. There's going to be some busts in the first couple of rounds. So moving on now to the Packers, who I think had the third best draft in this class, only because at least they actually got to add players in this class. They took a tight end, Josiah DeGuara, out of Cincinnati. As much as I love the UC Bearcats, my fiance goes to UC. I don't know. I don't love adding a tight end here. Jimmy Graham, when he was there, I feel like never really did much. I don't really think that's an offense that relies a whole bunch on the tight end, but I guess if you want to say they got Rodgers a weapon, they did get him a tight end, but I think that there were better wide receivers in the first and second round that they could have gotten instead of taking this tight end in the third. Jack, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they did get a playmaker. CBS has this ranked as a C-, but it's just not. I mean, we haven't seen tight ends over the last few years, at least with Jimmy Graham. We haven't seen a ton of success at that position. And rounding out the Packers draft class, I think it's hard for me to grade between the Bears and the Packers because I do think the Bears got a couple players with their 2 second-round picks that are going to come in and make an impact. I don't know if I can necessarily say the same about Green Bay. For me, I think it was a mistake waiting till the 5th overall or the 5th round to draft a linebacker. I've heard multiple friends say, hey, you put Eric Kendricks in the Packers defense. That's the exact type of player they need. I don't necessarily think they're going to get that. As much as I love Kamal Martin out of the University of Minnesota, I don't think they got that with him. I think he can become a legitimate linebacker, play some special teams early in his career, but I don't think they got that athletic type linebacker. I think I read somewhere that they were hopeful to land Troy Dye, who the Vikings got in the 4th round. That's the type of athletic profile linebacker that they needed, and they didn't get it. And then at the same time, like you said earlier, we are talking about historically one of the deepest wide receiver classes we have ever seen. And I think they're like next year they're already talking about the wide receiver class being very deep as well. But even if you have, like, say you were a different team, I don't know who I can think of off the top of my head, but if the Vikings had Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen still, I was still hopeful the Vikings were going to take a wide receiver in this draft class, just because you can't miss out on the talent level that came in this year at that position, and they did exactly that. They didn't even take a wide receiver towards the back half of the draft. I thought a guy like Tyler Johnson, you could have thrown him in the slot out there as well. I think he could have really benefited from a guy like Aaron Rodgers, as much as I would have hated seeing him go play for across the border. But I have a hard time saying whose draft was worse, because I do really like the Jalen Johnson pick for Chicago. And there's not a pick that I absolutely love right now for Green Bay. I mean, the Jordan Love pick could be something down the road where it's going to be like, oh, great, we have another 10, 15 years of an above average to elite quarterback. And I'm not saying that's the case, but I think he has a high ceiling. But going into the 2020 season, I think the Bears made more of an impact on their roster. So I think they're finishing third in my rankings, and I'm ranking Green Bay as the worst draft in the NFC North.
I could agree with you. As I was looking at it, especially since we're doing the first 3 rounds, specifically because those are the money rounds, if you want to call them that. Those are the rounds where the guys have a chance to get on the field year one, rookie season, and really show what they can do. And I think Kmet is going to stout. I think Johnson's going to get some playing time. I mean, they have a really good defense. They have a good secondary. I'll be honest, I've kind of slacked. I don't remember all of the pieces they lost, but I don't think Jalen Johnson steps in and immediately becomes the number 1 defensive back like Jeff Gladney does for the Vikings. But I think Jalen Johnson steps in and is going to be a really good piece on that defense. So I agree with you. I think I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to flip my rankings. I know it sucks. We're going to have the same rankings, but it kind of, I mean, it lines up. I really like the Lions draft. You know what? Just for the sake of us having different rankings, I'm putting the Vikings at 2, and I'm putting the Lions at 1. Strictly because I love Jeff Okudah that much. I think he's head and shoulders the best defensive back in this class. I think he's like the best defensive back maybe since like a guy like Jalen Ramsey came out. I mean, he is so good. I'm so in love with him. And then in the 3rd round, I think they get 2 guys who are going to be impact players as well. And DeAndre Swift, I think, is going to make an impact. I just don't know if that's the position they should have been looking at. They probably, if I was the GM of the Lions, I know it's a lot easier said than done. If I was running a Lions mock draft, I probably would have traded down that 2nd round pick and tried to either move later down into the 2nd and get a couple, 5th round picks or something. And I mean, it kind of shows they took a running back in the 5th round in Jason Huntley out of New Mexico State. So it's kind of like, what I don't understand why they're attacking it so much. Maybe they're not that high on Kerryon Johnson. I sure am, but I mean, those are the big picks out of this 2020 draft for the NFC North. Overall, I think the division, if I had to predict the rankings, I could easily see the Packers winning the division again. I could see the Vikings finishing in 3rd in this division. That's what I'm trying to get at. I think the Bears are not going to play Trubisky. And I know Nick Foles is not he's not going to play like he did all season long, like he did in the playoffs whenever he just murdered everybody. But I think he's better. I think he's more consistent. And I think with the weapons that they have on offense, especially adding a guy like Kmet, they're still going to have Khalil Mack. They're going to have, some solid play. They still have, obviously, a great defense. And I could see the Bears finishing in 2nd and maybe contending for a wild card. But I don't think the Vikings are finishing like 6 and 10. I think the Vikings are going to have a good 7, 8, 9 win season. I think the Bears are going to be right there at, between like 8 and 10 wins. I think the Lions, if you gave me the over-under of 5 wins, I would probably take the under, if I'm being honest with you. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. If I had to predict the division right now, gun to my head, I'd go Packers, Bears, Vikings, Lions. And then in 2021, again, gun to my head, I'd go, Vikings all the way. I think this is a really young group now that needs a year to develop and get their rookies some time under their belts, especially with the coronavirus and, camp not being actual camp and people having to do like virtual workouts. And it's a weird off season. It's not going to be as in-depth for the young guys. So, I'm excited to see what this team can do in 2 years. I'm obviously going to watch every game this season, and I'm going to love it while I do it. And I hope to be pleasantly surprised. But Jack, what's your opinion of the state of the division? The next year or two.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Vikings are going to be a little bit better than what you have them rated as. I think they're going to finish second. I do think it still is the Packers' division to lose. However, I think the Vikings are more talented still on paper, and they could be a lot worse next year. You just truly don't know, but I think they're more talented than Chicago on paper as of right now. Like you said, there is a lot of rookie talent that's going to have to pan out if the Vikings want to find success in 2020. Who knows how that'll go? I mean, it's not an easy transition for rookies, for all rookies, I should say. Some rookies come in and set the league on fire right away, but it's not an easy league for everyone to come into, and I just wanted to go back on the NFC North rankings, and I'm sticking with the Vikings as the first overall best draft in the NFC North. Having said that, just because I think one thing that gets overlooked, not necessarily overlooked, the Vikings had 15 total picks, and they absolutely crushed the undrafted portion of the draft as well afterwards. They got two big-name guys that probably should have been drafted in the middle rounds, and they somehow fell out of the 7 rounds and went undrafted with Neville Clark, the cornerback out of UCF, and then Courtney Davis, the wide receiver out of Texas A&M. Two guys to keep an eye on going into camp. But yeah, I agree with you. I still think it is the Packers' division to lose right now, but I definitely think the Vikings could turn some heads next season, especially if these rookies start to heat up early.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season to watch. Extra playoff team. So even if we finish like 8-8, we could still viably make the playoffs. It's not out of the question. And yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about the 2020 draft for the the NFC North. I'm excited to see what the Vikings do. I'm excited for anything related to like throwing a ball at this point. Baseball. Like, I would take, lacrosse. I mean, I don't care what it is. I need some action. I need something. I'm excited NASCAR is coming back, and I'm not a NASCAR person, but I'm excited about it. I'm excited for the NHL. They're saying they're going to finish their season. So I'm just excited for things to get back to normal and to be able to go outside. That's going to be very nice. But until then, we will continue to speculate about what this team can do. We will speculate about, is Justin Jefferson Laquan Treadwell, or is he Stephon Diggs or Adam Thielen? We'll probably at some point, it's coming soon too, we're going to start falling in love with some random, like, Nate Stanley type player that has no chance of playing on Sundays, but everyone is going to love him. And it doesn't have to be Nate Stanley. It could be the wide receiver out of Miami that we took to be a punt returner. It could be the undrafted, I think we signed an undrafted guard that played with... did he play at Minnesota State?
It was Augustana, Jake Lucina. He played with C.J. Ham.
That's who it was, because we got Cleveland played with Madison. Now we've got I have already forgotten his name. We got the offensive lineman out of Augustana that played with C.J. Ham. So it's going to be a fun off season. We're going to keep having shows, and we're going to keep trying to find stuff to talk about. But yeah, I think that's all I have this week. So, follow us on Twitter at LTB Vikings. Big shout out to Chase Dreams for the theme song for the Load the Box podcast. And Jack, I'll let you take us out.
Yeah, appreciate anyone that's listening. We enjoy doing this. Tomorrow night, not a huge step. I mean, it's not a normal thing. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's not like the most exciting thing tomorrow night, but the NFL schedule is being released. Hopefully they are able to get these games going on time. That would be a huge relief. Obviously, like you said, we need sports back in some shape or form, whether that means no one can be in the stadium and we're all watching on TV. At this point, sports are sports, and we all need our sports back. So no super long speech tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. If, like Jordan said earlier, if you want to get our takes all of the 15 picks and some of the undrafted guys, go back and listen to last week's show. It is a little bit longer, but we go into a little bit of detail on each and every pick. So had a lot of fun doing that as well, and I look forward to seeing what the Vikings schedule is going to be looking like. As of tomorrow, there's some rumors on Twitter going around. I never know what to believe. I feel like it's hard for people to make up rumors about a schedule. So if there are leaks, I'm not going to announce anything. I'm sure we'll tweet stuff about it on the Twitter page tomorrow. But having said that, I'm going to go and eat some steak. I haven't had dinner yet, and I will leave you with a Skol.